Usually, when we talk about a legal contract, there's this inherent expectation of precision, right?
Oh, definitely, yeah.
It's kind of like engineering. You sign on the dotted line, the terms are black and white, and if someone breaches the agreement, the law just simply points to the paper and dictates the remedy.
Right. It's supposed to be entirely objective.
Yeah.
Fulfill the terms or, pay the penalty.
Exactly. And it's comforting in a way. I mean, you build an entire society around that comfort because we all fundamentally, we crave things to be
We
categorized.
do. We need that structure.
Yeah, we want to be bound by clear, objective rules that protect us from chaos.
And that objective framework, that is the bedrock of global commerce today, just as it was centuries ago.
Right.
The entire concept of an enforceable contract is designed to completely remove human emotion from the equation. It's meant to be clean, sterile, binary.
But then, and this is why we're here today, you step into the world of William Shakespeare's The Merchant of Venice.
Oh boy, yeah.
And suddenly that neat black and white legal document is, well, it's quite literally dripping with blood.
Literally, yes.
We aren't looking at some sterile courtroom dispute over, like, breached fiduciary duties here. We are looking at a landscape of justice and human relationships that is just incredibly murky.
Murky is almost an understatement.
Yeah, and it's a place where the law itself becomes a weapon of absolute psychological and physical destruction.
It really is the absolute definition of muddy waters when it comes to morality, law, and human nature.
So our mission today for you listening is to completely peel back the layers of this specific text.
Right. We have the complete text of The Merchant of Venice as our source material for this deep dive.
And the goal is to examine how a story that is, ostensibly categorized as a romantic comedy.
Which is wild to think about.
Right, but how it functions simultaneously as a tense legal thriller and just a profoundly uncomfortable exploration of prejudice, debt, and human cruelty.
Yeah, we are going to examine the bustling, really cutthroat markets of Venice and contrast them with the fairy tale, almost mythical estate of Belmont.
And explore how those two drastically different worlds just violently collide.
Violently is the right word, and what you, the listener, will quickly realize is that while this text is centuries old, the anxieties driving these characters are entirely timeless.
Oh, 100%. It is a story totally obsessed with money, with the concept of mercy, and with the masks that people wear.
Both literally and figuratively.
Exactly. It forces you to consider what people actually owe each other. And not just on a financial ledger, but like on a human level.
Right.
And it's packed with these familiar phrases you've probably heard a million times without realizing their origin. But beneath those famous lines are some shocking twists that hit incredibly hard.
They really do. So we start in Venice.
Right off the bat. And the tone is deeply unsettling for a comedy.
It is. We meet a massively wealthy merchant named Antonio.
And his very first line in the play sets this strange, almost suffocating mood. He says, "In sooth, I know not why I am so sad."
Yeah.
He's just inexplicably, profoundly depressed.
It's such a striking paradoxical opening, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because he continues telling his friends, "It wearies me, you say it wearies you, but how I caught it, found it, or came by it, I am to learn."
He has no idea why he's sad.
Exactly. He is experiencing this deep melancholy that he just cannot attach to any specific logical cause.
Right.
But he says it makes him a want-wit, meaning it's dulling his mind and his senses.
Which immediately establishes this tragic undertone. Think about the environment he's in.
Yeah, Venice.
Venice is the epicenter of global trade. It's a world defined by relentless action, networking, commerce.
It's all about motion and money.
Exactly. Yet here is one of its chief architects completely paralyzed by a strange internal grief.
He is a man who seemingly has everything the material world can offer, yet he is entirely detached from it.
And naturally, his friends, Salarino and Salanio, they try to play armchair psychologist.
Of course they do.
They immediately project their own materialistic worldviews onto his emotional state. They're basically convinced he must be worried about his business.
Because what else is there to worry about?
Right. Salarino paints this incredibly vivid picture of Antonio's merchant ships, his argosies, tossing on the open ocean.
They're basically telling him, look, if I had that much capital tied up in risky sea ventures, I'd be terrified too.
Yeah, he says he'd be plucking grass to see which way the wind blows.
I'd be terrified of every rock and shallow, yeah.
And that interaction, it reveals exactly how these men measure human worth, doesn't it?
It really does. To Salarino and Salanio, emotional states are directly tethered to financial risk.
Yeah.
They literally cannot conceptualize a sadness that isn't rooted in a fluctuating stock portfolio.
Which is so telling. Salarino literally says that even going to church and seeing the Holy Stone edifice would just make him think of dangerous rocks that could shatter his ships.
Right, and scatter all his precious spices and silks onto the water.
They view the world purely through the lens of material hazard.
Yeah, they articulate the absolute terror of early capitalism. You know, to be worth this much one moment and then suddenly worth nothing.
But Antonio completely shuts that theory down.
He does.
He insists his ventures aren't trusted to just one ship or one place or even one year's fortune. He's diversified.
He's the ultimate protected investor.
Yeah. So his friends pivot and they guess, well, okay, you must be in love.
And Antonio just dismisses it with a fey.
Basically like nonsense.
Yeah. So we have this protagonist who is rich, secure in his wealth, and not lovelorn.
Right.
Yet he tells his other friend Graziano later that he views the world as a stage where every man must play a part, and mine a sad one.
It's such a fatalistic worldview.
It really is. He's scripting his own tragedy before the inciting incident even happens.
And this unexplained sadness, it creates this psychological vacuum that the rest of the plot is going to rush in to fill.
That's a great way to put it. Antonio's detachment from the material world, his sense that he is merely playing a sad role on a stage, it perhaps explains why he is so alarmingly willing to risk his own life later on.
Oh, that makes a lot of sense.
Right. He doesn't seem to value his own biological existence as much as he values his emotional relationships.
And the relationship he values above all else is with a young man named Bassanio.
Enter Bassanio.
Yes, enter Bassanio. And for anyone listening who has ever had a friend constantly pitching you on their next big scheme,
We all know one.
Bassanio is going to feel very familiar. He comes to Antonio, his close friend, and admits, I have disabled mine estate by something showing a more swelling port than my faint means would grant continuance.
Let's translate that for a second.
Yeah, basically, I've been living a massively lavish lifestyle to look incredibly rich. I've burned through all my cash, and now I'm drowning in debt.
Spot on. And to top it off, he admits that he owes the most money to Antonio himself.
Which is wild. Okay, let's unpack this. The rhetorical strategy Bassanio employs here is fascinating to deconstruct.
It really is. He already owes Antonio an enormous sum, both in money and in love, as he says.
Right.
So how does one ask a primary creditor for an even larger loan?
You'd think he'd come with a solid business plan.
But he doesn't. Bassanio uses a metaphor of childhood innocence. He talks about how when he was a boy and lost an arrow, he would shoot a second arrow in the exact same direction, watch it carefully, and often find both.
Such a manipulative metaphor.
It is. He tells Antonio, if you shoot another arrow the same way you shot the first one, I'll either find both or at least bring the second one back and remain in your debt for the first.
I have to pause here because we really need to look at Bassanio's motives. If you step back and look at the mechanics of this pitch, isn't Bassanio just a classic user?
I mean, it's very easy to see him that way.
Think of the modern equivalent. It's like a buddy who maxed out their credit cards, blew through the 20 grand you loaned them last year, and is now sitting in your living room asking you to co-sign a massive multi-million-dollar loan for a highly risky startup pitch to a billionaire.
Yeah.
And his only guarantee is, hey, if I land this billionaire, I'll totally pay you back that 20 grand.
And the billionaire in this case is Portia, a rich heiress in Belmont.
Right. So, I mean, it is remarkably easy to view Bassanio cynically. A modern reader almost instinctually does.
They do, and with good reason. He describes Portia to Antonio as a lady richly left. He explicitly notes her massive wealth before he even bothers to mention that she is beautiful or possesses wondrous virtues.
Money comes first.
Always. In the socioeconomic world the text is building here, romantic love and financial acquisition are inextricably linked.
Yeah.
Bassanio is essentially asking for venture capital seed funding to execute a corporate merger disguised as a marriage.
It's predatory when you lay it out like that. But what's equally wild is Antonio's response. He doesn't ask for a business plan.
No.
He doesn't hesitate or demand collateral. He says, my purse, my person, my extremist means lie all unlocked to your occasions.
It's a literal blank check of his wealth and his physical body.
Why is Antonio so utterly reckless here? It just seems crazy.
Well, it speaks to the complex nature of their bond and the cultural fabric of Venice.
Yeah.
In this society, the lines between deep personal loyalty, homosocial devotion, and financial venture capitalism, they just completely blur together.
Wow. Okay.
Friendship is a form of currency. Antonio's love for Bassanio is expressed not through emotional boundary setting, but through absolute financial backing.
He wants to be the singular provider.
Exactly. He wants to be everything for Bassanio. However, there is a logistical hurdle.
Right, he doesn't actually have the cash.
Right. Antonio tells him, "Thou knowest that all my fortunes are at sea. Neither have I money nor commodity to raise a present sum."
So he is incredibly wealthy on paper, but completely illiquid at this exact moment.
He's cash poor.
So he tells Bassanio to go out into the markets of Venice and use Antonio's pristine credit rating to secure the cash from a third party.
He literally commands him to stretch his credit to the absolute limit. He says, "Try what my credit can in Venice do. That shall be racked even to the uttermost."
And that single instruction, that is the catalyst that sets the entire tragedy into motion.
It is the spark.
Bassanio has the green light to find a lender, which brings us to the most complex, debated, and explosive figure in the text, and a deeply contentious negotiation scene.
Yes. Bassanio requires 3,000 ducats for 3 months. That is a staggering sum.
Huge.
To secure it, he approaches Shylock, a wealthy Jewish moneylender. And the dynamic of this initial encounter is instantly fraught.
You can feel the tension immediately.
You really can. Shylock's linguistic style is completely different from the flowing, poetic verse of the Christian merchants. He speaks in prose, repeating Bassanio's terms, chewing on the data.
Yeah, he's like, 3,000 ducats well, for 3 months well, Antonio shall become bound well.
He is meticulously calculating risk.
And Bassanio gets defensive almost immediately. When Shylock notes that Antonio is a good man, Bassanio takes it as a slight against his friend's character.
Right, he snaps back. "Have you heard any imputation to the contrary?"
But Shylock isn't talking about morality. He's talking about a credit score.
Exactly. He clarifies he means good purely in the financial sense.
Mm-hmm.
Antonio is sufficient.
Right.
But Shylock isn't naive. He lists exactly where Antonio's ships are bound. Tripolis, the Indies, Mexico, England.
He's done his homework.
He has. And he points out the physical, terrifying realities of the world that Antonio so arrogantly dismissed earlier. Shylock notes, "Ships are but boards, sailors but men. There be land rats and water rats, I mean pirates."
And then there is the peril of waters, winds, and rocks.
Shylock is performing due diligence. He understands the mechanics of hazard far better than the men who are actually hazarding the capital.
But the tension fundamentally shifts when Antonio himself arrives on the scene.
It does.
Yeah.
And before Shylock engages Antonio directly, the text provides a really pivotal aside.
Shylock speaks his inner thoughts directly to the audience, revealing his core motivations.
Right. He says of Antonio, how like a fawning publican he looks. I hate him for he is a Christian, but more for that in low simplicity, he lends out money gratis and brings down the rate of usance here with us in Venice.
That distinction right there is everything. You have two distinct reasons for hatred operating simultaneously.
Yes.
Shylock admits to a religious animosity. He hates Antonio because he is a Christian in a society where Christians aggressively and violently marginalize Jews.
And that's a historical reality of the setting.
But the second reason is strictly economic and arguably much more pressing to Shylock's day-to-day survival.
Absolutely. Antonio lends money gratis, meaning without charging interest, out of a sense of Christian charity.
Whereas Shylock makes his living through usance or charging interest on loans.
And the text demands we look at this clash of economic philosophies objectively.
Right, we have to step back.
Shylock operates within the realities of his marginalized status. Moneylending was one of the few professions legally available to Jewish people in many parts of Renaissance Europe.
Because they were barred from guilds and land ownership.
Exactly. So he prices risk and charges interest, which is just a foundational concept of modern banking.
Yeah.
Antonio, however, actively undercuts Shylock's business model by flooding the market with zero-interest loans.
Shylock sees this not as charity, but as predatory market manipulation designed to ruin him.
He states clearly, "If I can catch him once upon the hip, I will feed fat the ancient grudge I bear him." He is actively looking for a vulnerability.
So the moment Antonio joins the conversation, the polite facade of business transaction completely evaporates.
It's gone?
They start debating the morality of charging interest. Shylock uses this complex story about Jacob's sheep from the Old Testament to justify how thrift is blessing if men steal it not.
And Antonio dismisses this entirely. He turns to Bassanio and says the devil can cite scripture for his purpose, basically calling Shylock a manipulative demon right to his face.
And it's here that Shylock drops the businessman routine entirely and confronts Antonio directly about his past physical behavior.
The speech Shylock delivers here is one of the most vital passages for understanding the psychological terrain of the play.
It's so intense.
He tells Antonio, Signor Antonio, many a time and oft, "In the Rialto, you have rated me about my monies and my usances.
Meaning you've berated me in public.
Yes. He explains that he has borne this abuse with a patient shrug, because sufferance is the badge of all our tribe. And then he lists the specific, grotesque abuses he has suffered.
He recounts how Antonio has called him a misbeliever, cutthroat dog, how he has spat upon his Jewish gabardine and kicked him over the threshold like a stray dog.
Think about the pure hypocrisy of this situation.
It's staggering. Shylock points out that Antonio has physically assaulted him, spat on him, and dehumanized him simply for using his own money in the marketplace.
Right.
And now Antonio is standing there asking for a massive uncollateralized loan.
It makes no sense.
Shylock's retort is blistering, and it's completely logical. He forces Antonio to look at his own contradiction, asking, "What should I say to you? Should I not say half a dog money? Is it possible a cur can lend 3,000 ducats?"
He is demanding to know why a man would ask a favor of a creature he treats as subhuman.
And this passage generates profound, undeniable sympathy for Shylock.
It does. The text establishes as a factual premise that Shylock is marginalized, isolated, and subjected to horrific abuse by the Christian majority, with Antonio acting as the chief abuser.
Yet the brilliance of the text is that it refuses to make Shylock a purely passive martyr.
No, not at all. He is a victim, yes, but he is also a deeply angry man who is actively looking to become a victimizer if given the opportunity.
Now, you would think a normal person confronted with this history of their own terrible behavior might back down or at least offer like a tactical apology to secure the loan.
You'd think.
But Antonio's reaction is wild. He looks Shylock in the eye and unapologetically doubles down.
He really does.
He says, "I am as like to call thee so again, to spet on thee again, to spurn thee too."
He actually tells Shylock not to lend the money as a friend, but to lend it as an enemy. He says, if you lend to an enemy, you can exact the penalty with a clear conscience if I default.
It is a breathtaking display of arrogance.
Antonio is so utterly secure in his social standing, his religion, and his anticipated wealth that he feels completely untouchable.
Yeah, he feels no need to negotiate emotionally because he believes he holds all the systemic power.
And this is the precise moment Shylock pivots.
It's so creepy how he does it.
He suddenly softens his tone. He pretends he wants to be friends. He offers to lend the 3,000 ducats without charging a single cent of interest.
Which is a complete reversal of his core business practice.
Exactly. He calls it a merry sport, a joke. But the condition of this so-called joke is terrifying.
He proposes that if Antonio fails to repay the exact sum on the exact day, the penalty will be an equal pound of your fair flesh to be cut off and taken. In what part of your body pleaseth me?
He is demanding a literal pound of Antonio's body.
Bassanio, to his credit, immediately panics.
As he should.
He tells Antonio absolutely not. He says, "You shall not seal to such a bond for me. I'll rather dwell in my necessity." He recognizes the trap.
But Antonio, he agrees instantly, without a second thought. Content, in faith, I'll seal to such a bond, and say there is much kindness in the Jew.
I have to ask, how do we explain this? Why on earth does Antonio agree to a contract that legally sanctions his own mutilation?
Well, it is the ultimate manifestation of the hubris of the privileged.
Okay, unpack that.
Antonio represents a man who has never faced true ruin, and therefore he literally cannot fathom his own downfall.
Right, he's insulated.
He immediately assures Bassanio that his ships will return a full month before the bond expires, bringing in 3 times the value of the loan. He views his place in the universe as entirely secure.
He cannot conceive of a reality where his ships sink.
Exactly. And more importantly, he cannot conceive of a reality where this marginalized outsider, whom he openly despises and abuses, could actually hold physical power over his life. To Antonio, the gruesome penalty is absurd because the possibility of default is absurd.
He thinks he's immune to gravity.
He really does.
So they head off to the notary to sign this blood-soaked contract. And while Venice operates on this foundation of liquid capital, brutal risk, and visible prejudice, the text abruptly pulls us across the sea to Belmont.
Right.
And here, we encounter a very different kind of binding contract, one built not on commerce, but on inherited wealth and dead men's rules.
The structural contrast between the two locations is really central to understanding the source material.
Venice versus Belmont.
Yes. Venice is characterized by hard commerce, gritty reality, and the blunt force of mercantile law. Belmont is presented as a fairy tale estate, seemingly removed from the dirt of the Rialto.
But it's not perfect.
No. Underneath the serene surface of immense wealth, Portia is experiencing her own form of absolute captivity.
Portia's introduction almost perfectly mirrors Antonio's melancholy, actually. Her first line is, By my troth, Nerissa, my little body is aweary of this great world.
She possesses limitless financial resources, but zero autonomy.
Right, she is legally bound by the terms of her dead father's will. She complains to her waiting woman, "Oh me, the word choose. I may neither choose who I would nor refuse who I dislike. So is the will of a living daughter curbed by the will of a dead father."
And the mechanism of this posthumous control is the famous casket lottery.
Right.
Her father decreed that any suitor wishing to marry Portia must choose between 3 chests or caskets, one made of gold, one of silver, and one of dull lead.
The suitor who chooses the chest containing Portia's portrait wins her hand in marriage and thereby gains control of her massive estate.
But the penalty for choosing incorrectly is severe. The suitor must swear a solemn oath never to speak to any lady afterward in the way of marriage. They are condemned to a solitary, airless life.
I look at this casket lottery and my first thought is that this is basically a high-stakes psychological escape room designed by a paranoid billionaire.
That's actually a great analogy.
He wants to ensure his daughter doesn't end up with a superficial gold digger or an arrogant fool. It's a test of character disguised as a game of chance.
It really is.
Let's analyze the suitors who actually braved the test because their choices are incredibly revealing. Here's where it gets really interesting.
Let's look at them. First, we have the Prince of Morocco.
Right. And he is immediately drawn to the gold casket. The inscription reads, "Who chooseth me shall gain what many men desire."
And the Prince of Morocco's reasoning is entirely surface level and driven by consensus value. He argues that Portia is what all the world desires.
Yeah, he operates on the logic of the global commodity trade.
He cannot fathom that a portrait of such a precious, universally desired woman would be housed in anything less than the most precious metal on earth. He says never so rich a gem was set in worse than gold.
He equates human worth entirely with material valuation.
Exactly. But when he unlocks the gold casket, he is confronted with a skull, a carrion death, and a scroll containing the famous warning. All that glisters is not gold.
He learns the hard way that you cannot judge intrinsic value by a gilded cover.
No, you can't.
Next up is the Prince of Aragon. He gravitates toward the silver casket, which bears the promise, "Who chooseth me shall get as much as he deserves."
And Aragon's ego is just completely off the charts.
Seriously, he reads that and essentially thinks, well, obviously I deserve the absolute best. He assumes his own merit without a shred of self-reflection.
Aragon represents the blindness of aristocratic arrogance. He explicitly states that he will assume desert. He believes his nobility, his bloodline, and his breeding automatically entitle him to Portia.
Yeah, he despises the fool multitude that chooses by show, thinking himself vastly superior.
But when he opens the silver casket, he doesn't find Portia. He finds the portrait of a blinking idiot, a fool's head.
The text aggressively punishes his unwarranted self-importance.
It does. He believed he deserved the prize, simply for existing as he is, and the casket reveals him to be a fool for believing so.
So the game has eliminated superficial desire and pure aristocratic arrogance. Finally, Bassanio arrives in Belmont.
And Portia is thrilled. She clearly already likes him, and the tension is high.
Bassanio is faced with the caskets. He looks past the gold and the silver and focuses on the dull lead casket. Its warning is blunt and uncompromising. "Who chooseth me must give and hazard all he hath."
And Bassanio, delivering a speech about how the world is still deceived with ornament and how outward shows are often false, chooses the humble lead.
He opens it, finds Portia's picture, and wins the lottery.
On the surface, this is presented as a triumph of wisdom over superficiality.
Right, he figured out the puzzle.
Bassanio correctly identifies that true worth often lies beneath an unappealing exterior, much like a rough stone hiding a diamond.
Yeah.
However, the text demands that the audience sit with a deeply uncomfortable contradiction here.
And what's that?
Consider Bassanio's actual circumstances. He stands in Belmont delivering a beautifully eloquent speech condemning gaudy gold as hard food for Midas. Yet his entire mission to Belmont was funded by a massive financial gamble, explicitly to win a wealthy wife so he could pay off his massive debts.
That contradiction is exactly what makes him so fascinating. He's literally denouncing wealth while actively trying to marry into it.
Exactly.
He chose the casket that demands he hazard all he have, but what is he actually hazarding? Nothing of his own.
No, he is hazarding Antonio's flesh.
Wow. But beyond Bassanio's hypocrisy, we also have to look at Portia's role here, right? Because she is legally bound by the rules, but does she exert subtle agency?
It's a great question. While Bassanio is deliberating, she calls for a song to be played. And the song contains a very specific series of rhymes. Bread, head, nourished.
All of these words subtly rhyme with the word lead.
It is a brilliant, highly debated detail.
Yeah.
Is Portia cheating the system her father built?
I mean, it certainly seems like it.
Whether the musical cue is conscious or unconscious on Bassanio's part, the environment of Belmont is gently guiding him toward the correct choice.
It really underscores that Belmont, unlike the blunt force of Venice, is a place of hidden rules, soft power, and subtle manipulations.
Yes. And once Bassanio wins, Portia formally hands over herself, her mansion, and all her wealth to him, symbolizing the total transfer of power with a ring.
She tells him that if he ever parts with, loses, or gives away this ring, it will presage the ruin of your love.
And Bassanio naturally swears he will wear it until his finger rots off.
So we achieve this beautiful fairy tale resolution. The boy gets the girl, the massive debts are seemingly going to be paid off, and the music is swelling.
But just as they're celebrating, the brutal reality of Venice crashes the party.
Yeah, a messenger arrives with a letter for Bassanio, and the news is absolutely catastrophic.
Antonio's supposedly safe, diversified ships didn't come in. Every single one of them wrecked.
From Tripolis, Mexico, England, India, not one vessel escaped the merchant marring rocks.
Antonio's completely bankrupt,
Yeah.
and Shylock is aggressively demanding his pound of flesh.
To understand why Shylock is now pursuing this bond with such relentless, murderous intent, we really must examine a secondary plot that is unfolded back in Venice while Bassanio was safely wooing Portia in Belmont.
Right. Shylock hasn't just been waiting for the bond to expire. He has suffered a devastating personal and financial betrayal that shatters his psyche and sends him over the edge.
His only daughter, Jessica, has eloped.
And it's not just that she eloped. She eloped with a Christian named Lorenzo, who happens to be part of Antonio and Bassanio's immediate friend group.
Which is just rubbing salt in the wound.
Yes.
Oh.
Jessica expresses deep hatred for her life at home, famously declaring, "Our house is hell." She dresses up as a boy to escape in the middle of the night.
But crucially, and this is the part that escalates everything, as she is leaving, she decides to rob her father.
She steals a massive amount of his gold and precious jewels.
She literally throws a casket of stolen wealth down to Lorenzo from the window, saying, "Here, catch this casket. It is worth the pains."
This theft is the accelerant for the climax of the play. It is not merely a daughter running away. It is a massive transfer of liquid capital from a marginalized moneylender to the privileged Christian class.
Yeah, the text portrays Shylock wandering the streets of Venice, utterly devastated and enraged, crying out, "My daughter! Oh, my ducats! Oh, my daughter! Fled with a Christian! Oh, my Christian ducats!"
He is mockingly reported by Antonio's friends, Salarino and Salanio, who find his frantic grief utterly hilarious.
They see no distinction between his love for his child and his love for his money.
But the text forces the listener into a much deeper, more uncomfortable psychological space.
It really does, because right after Antonio's friends are laughing about Shylock's missing daughter, they ask him if he's heard the rumors about Antonio's ruined ships.
And Shylock confirms that he plans to take the flesh.
Salarino, almost incredulous, asks, "What is it good for? You can't do anything with human flesh."
And Shylock delivers what is arguably the most famous, powerful speech in the entire text.
He answers that it will feed my revenge. He outlines the systemic abuse he has endured.
He details how Antonio disgraced him, hindered him by $500,000, laughed at his losses, mocked his gains, scorned his nation, and heeded his enemies.
And why? And what's his reason? "I am a Jew."
He then asks the defining questions of the play. Hath not a Jew eyes? Hath not a Jew hands, organs, dimensions, senses, affections, passions?
Fed with the same food, hurt with the same weapons, subject to the same diseases, healed by the same means, warmed and cooled by the same winter and summer as a Christian is. If you prick us, do we not bleed?
It's an incredible piece of writing.
When you read it, it stands as this towering, profound plea for basic human equality.
It strips away all the societal labels and religious divisions and just says, look, biologically, emotionally, physiologically, we are exactly the same.
But you have to look at the context of why he's saying it. There is a deeply dark pivot at the end of the speech.
Precisely. The speech is frequently excerpted as a humanist anthem, but within the text, it is not a plea for peace or tolerance.
No.
It is a flawlessly constructed logical trap. Shylock uses this shared fundamental humanity to justify a shared brutality.
He concludes his argument by saying, if a Jew wrong a Christian, what is his humility? Revenge. If a Christian wrong a Jew, what should his sufferance be by Christian example? Why, revenge.
The villainy you teach me, I will execute, and it shall go hard. but I will better the instruction.
He is essentially holding up a mirror to Venetian society and saying, you have treated me with ruthless cruelty, and because we are the same, I am now going to reflect that exact cruelty back at you, only I will execute it more ruthlessly.
And right after delivering this terrifying promise of violence, he gets news from his friend Tubal about Jessica's whereabouts.
Tubal says he heard Jessica spent 80 ducats in a single night in Genoa.
Shylock reacts viscerally, saying, "Thou sticks a dagger in me."
But the detail that truly breaks him is when Tubal reveals that Jessica traded a ring for a monkey.
A monkey?
And Shylock's reaction here shatters the image of the cold, unfeeling usurer. He says, "It was my turquoise. I had it of Leah when I was a bachelor. I would not have given it for a wilderness of monkeys."
That specific detail, the turquoise ring, is a masterstroke of psychological characterization.
It humanizes Shylock profoundly.
It really does. Beneath the hardened exterior of the ruthless businessman is a grieving widower. The ring was a gift from his late wife, Leah, given before they were married.
Its value to him is not financial, it is entirely sentimental.
It is a piece of his history, a connection to love. And his own daughter has casually, flippantly squandered his most precious memory of his wife for a novelty pet.
He is utterly broken by this realization.
It destroys whatever restraint or mercy he might have had left, solidifying his absolute resolve to take Antonio's heart.
I want to push back on how the other characters view this, though, because it's maddening.
Oh, it is.
The Christians in the story, guys like Lorenzo and Graciano, they celebrate Jessica. Graciano literally says, "Now by my hood, a gentle and no Jew," meaning she's acting like a noble Christian.
But she essentially robs her father blind and trades his dead wife's ring for a monkey.
Right. Why does the text present her actions this way? Does it want the audience to view her as a hero escaping oppression or as a callous thief?
The text presents a deeply uncomfortable moral dissonance that the listener must grapple with. It does not offer easy moral categorizations.
The Christian characters view taking Jewish wealth as justified, almost as a righteous act of liberating capital from an unbeliever.
They reframe her theft as salvation. Yet simultaneously, they view Shylock's legal demand for his bond as the height of monstrous evil.
The lines of morality are entirely blurred by in-group bias.
Exactly. The text forces you to witness the hypocrisy of a society that condones theft and emotional devastation under the guise of religious superiority, while condemning legal enforcement when it threatens one of their own insiders.
And that psychological break brings us directly to the climax. The stage is set for the ultimate showdown in the Duke's court in Venice.
Antonio is bankrupt, chained, and completely resigned to his fate. He calls himself a tainted wether of the flock, meetest for death.
Shylock is pushed to murderous grief, standing in the court, physically sharpening his knife on the sole of his shoe, demanding his pound of flesh.
Now, you might be thinking, this is the Duke of Venice. He's the ruler. Why doesn't he just throw this ridiculous barbaric contract out?
Yeah, why doesn't he?
Well, it is a crucial point regarding the jurisprudence and the geopolitical reality of Venice. The Duke explicitly states that he cannot deny the course of law.
Venice is not an absolute monarchy operating on the whims of a king. It is a mercantile empire.
Its entire economy, its survival, depends entirely on foreign merchants trusting the integrity of its legal system.
If the Duke arbitrarily overrules a legally binding contract simply to save a citizen from an alien, the trade and profit of the city will collapse.
The law must be upheld impartially, even if the outcome is horrific. The rigidity of the law is both the source of Venice's immense power and its inescapable trap.
Bassanio is in the courtroom, having rushed back from Belmont, and he is desperate. He offers Shylock double the principal, 6,000 ducats.
But Shylock flatly refuses. He tells the court that even if every ducat were divided into 6 parts, and every part were the ducat, he would not take the money.
He demands the pound of flesh, claiming it as his rightful purchased property.
And the argument he uses to justify this is incredibly provocative. He compares his ownership of Antonio's flesh to how the Christians own and mistreat enslaved people.
He points out, you buy slaves, you use them like animals, and if I told you to set them free, you would say, the slaves are ours.
So Shylock says, the pound of flesh is mine, I bought it dearly, and I will have it.
He is weaponizing their own system of bodily ownership and property rights against them.
It is an unanswerable argument within the brutal logic of their society. Shylock has backed them into a legal and philosophical corner.
He is standing entirely, immovably on the foundation of their own law.
And just as all hope seems completely lost, a young male legal expert arrives, ostensibly sent by a learned doctor of laws from Padua to assist the Duke.
His name is Balthazar, but, as the listener knows, Balthazar is actually Portia in disguise, accompanied by her clerk, who is her servant Nerissa in disguise.
The heiress of Belmont has infiltrated the gritty, male-dominated courts of Venice to save her new husband's best friend.
Portia, as Balthazar, examines the bond and agrees that it is legally forfeit. But before she issues a ruling, she turns to Shylock and asks him to show mercy.
This leads to her legendary speech. She tells him, "The quality of mercy is not strained. It droppeth as the gentle rain from heaven upon the place beneath."
She explains that mercy is an attribute of God himself, and earthly power is most like God's when mercy seasons justice.
The speech is not merely a poetic plea. It is a profound theological and philosophical argument.
Portia is contrasting the Old Testament concept of strict retributive justice, an eye for an eye, with the New Testament concept of grace and unearned forgiveness.
She is warning Shylock that if we all demand strict literal justice from the universe, none of us should see salvation.
She's offering him a spiritual exit strategy. She's giving him the chance to elevate himself above the cruelty he has suffered and the cruelty he intends to inflict.
But Shylock is completely unmoved. He replies, "My deeds upon my head. I crave the law, the penalty and forfeit of my bond."
He wants strict justice, nothing else. So Portia begins to rule on the case. And shockingly, she sides entirely with Shylock.
She declares the law is clear, the bond is forfeit, and Shylock has the absolute legal right to cut a pound of flesh from nearest Antonio's heart.
Shylock is ecstatic. He praises her, calling her a Daniel come to judgment, referencing the biblical judge of immense wisdom.
Antonio bares his chest. He says his goodbyes to Bassanio.
Shylock steps forward with the knife. He is literally millimeters away from carving into Antonio's chest.
The dramatic tension here is at its absolute peak. Shylock is poised to strike. And then at the very last possible microsecond, Portia says, "Tarry a little. There is something else."
And here is where the brilliance and the underlying terror of the scene unfolds. She points out a fatal loophole.
The bond explicitly allows a pound of flesh, but she notes that it says absolutely nothing about blood.
She reads the exact pedantic wording back to him. "This bond doth give thee here no jot of blood. The words expressly are a pound of flesh."
It is the ultimate legal gotcha moment.
She tells him he is free to take his pound of flesh, but if, in the process of cutting it, he sheds even one single drop of Christian blood, all his lands and goods will be confiscated by the state of Venice according to their laws.
It is, of course, physically impossible to cut a pound of flesh without spilling blood.
She doesn't defeat him with a grand moral argument. She beats him at his own game of strict, pedantic literalism.
It is a stunning, breathtaking reversal. Portia defeats Shylock not through a broad, sweeping appeal to justice or human rights, but by out-lawyering him.
She applies an even narrower, more unforgiving literal reading of the text than he did.
Realizing he is completely trapped by his own insistence on the letter of the law, Shylock immediately backs down.
The revenge is impossible. He says, "Fine, I'll just take the money Bassanio offered earlier. Give me my principal and let me go."
But Portia slams the door shut. She says absolutely not. He refused the money in open court in front of everyone.
He demanded only strict justice, and so he shall have nothing but the penalty, which, as she just proved, he cannot safely execute.
And then she springs the final, devastating trap. She cites another, deeply buried Venetian law.
Because Shylock is classified as an alien, a non-citizen, and he demonstrably sought the life of a citizen, Antonio, the penalty is absolute ruin.
Under this law, half his wealth goes to the person he tried to kill, the other half goes to the state, and his own life lies entirely at the mercy of the Duke.
The shift in power is instantaneous and total. Shylock goes from holding the power of life and death to being entirely stripped of his agency, his wealth, and his safety in a matter of minutes.
The Duke, eager to display the Christian mercy Portia spoke of, immediately pardons Shylock's life before he even asks, pointing out the difference of our spirit.
But the financial ruin remains intact. Shylock essentially asks them to kill him, noting that taking the means by which he lives is the same as taking his life.
And then, the Duke allows Antonio, the man who was moments away from being murdered, to dictate the final terms of Shylock's punishment.
And what Antonio demands is just brutal. It's hard to read.
It is.
He says he'll give up his claim to the half of the wealth that was awarded to him, placing it in a trust, provided Shylock agrees to two conditions.
First, he must sign a deed giving all his remaining wealth upon his death to Lorenzo and Jessica, the very daughter who robbed him and the man she ran away with.
And second, He must presently become a Christian.
This is a moment where we must look clearly at the historical context while acknowledging its devastating impact. To an Elizabethan audience, this forced conversion might have been rationalized as an act of ultimate, tough, mercy-saving Shylock's eternal soul from damnation by forcing him into the true faith.
However, to a critical reader, it is a complete psychological execution.
They are stripping a man of his religious identity, his cultural heritage, his livelihood, and the very last vestiges of his family structure.
They are legally mandating his total erasure as a Jewish man.
Shylock's response to this total annihilation is just 3 words of surrender. I am content.
And then he asks to leave. He says, I pray you give me leave to go from hence. I am not well. And he walks out of the court and out of the play completely shattered. We never see him again.
He is physically alive, but culturally, financially, and personally annihilated. The law, which he trusted to protect his contract, was twisted to destroy his existence.
So what does this all mean? We have to ask a massive question regarding Portia here. Why does she let it go so far?
It's a great question.
Put yourself in that courtroom. If she knew about the loophole the entire time, and she clearly did, why does she let Shylock get his knife out, have Antonio bare his chest, and get millimeters away from murder before springing the trap? Why not just state the law immediately and end the trial an hour earlier?
It's a vital, deeply revealing question about her character. Portia is actively testing him.
She gives him every possible opportunity to choose mercy of his own free will.
She offers him the theological argument. He rejects it. Bassanio offers him vast sums of money, doubling and tripling the debt. He rejects it.
She even rules in his favor initially, giving him total, unmitigated power over his enemy, perhaps to see if the reality of holding that power might soften his heart.
It doesn't. He proves utterly ruthless, sharpening his knife and hungering for blood. I would suggest that Portia lets him go to the very edge of murder because once he proves his absolute lack of humanity and mercy, she feels morally justified in completely and utterly destroying him legally.
He built the trap. She simply waited until he was entirely inside it before closing the door.
Exactly.
The courtroom drama concludes, Shylock is gone, and Antonio is saved. It feels like the end of the story. You'd expect the credits to roll.
But the play actually has an entire 5th act left to go.
And the transition is jarring. We go from a literal, sweaty life-and-death struggle over a pound of human flesh to a comedic, yet very pointed domestic dispute over rings.
Yes, the transition is abrupt, but it is deeply intentional. The text is forcing a shift in power dynamics.
After the trial, Bassanio is overwhelmed with gratitude toward this brilliant young lawyer, Balthazar, who just saved his best friend's life. He tries to pay the lawyer the 3,000 ducats.
Portia, still in her male disguise, refuses the money entirely. But Bassanio insists on giving some tribute, demanding the lawyer take something as a token of gratitude.
So Portia demands the one specific thing she knows he cannot give, the ring he is wearing. The very ring she gave him in Belmont, which he swore on his life never to remove.
It is a brilliant, manipulative test of loyalty. At first, Bassanio does the right thing. He refuses. He says it's a trifle. His wife gave it to him. He made a vow. He simply can't part with it.
Portia pretends to be highly insulted, calls him ungrateful, and walks away.
But then Antonio, the man who just had his chest saved from a knife, pressures Bassanio. Antonio says, "Let his deservings, and my love withal, be valued against your wife's commandment."
Basically, Antonio is saying, my male friendship and this lawyer's merit matter more than your wife's domestic rule.
So Bassanio caves. He sends the ring after the lawyer. And Gratiano, following his boss's lead, gives his ring to the clerk, Nerissa.
This ring plot serves a very specific structural purpose. It entirely reasserts Portia's dominance and control over her new husband.
In the courtroom, she saved Antonio's life using her immense intellect in a fiercely male-dominator sphere. Now, she's going to teach Bassanio a lesson about priority and loyalty.
She intentionally forces a conflict between his male bonds of friendship, the homosocial world of Venice, and his marital vows to her.
And by making him give up the ring at Antonio's urging, she proves that those male bonds still exert a stronger pull on him. She is setting the stage back in Belmont to violently correct that hierarchy.
So Act V takes place back in the fairy tale setting of Belmont. It's a moonlit night. Lorenzo and Jessica, the runaway couple who are now suddenly wealthy thanks to Shylock's forced deed of gift, are sitting on a bank, listening to music.
And they share this dialogue that is undeniably beautiful in its poetry, but also strangely ominous if you listen to the words.
They keep repeating the phrase "in such a night" and then listing all these famous lovers from classical mythology.
It is a masterclass in atmospheric dissonance, they say. In such a night, Troilus, methinks, mounted the Trojan walls. In such a night did Thisbe fearfully o'ertrip the dew. In such a night stood Dido with a willow in her hand. In such a night Medea gathered the enchanted herbs.
What is striking and deeply unsettling is that every single one of the lovers they invoke, Troilus and Cressida, Paramis and Thisbe, Dido and Aeneas, Medea and Jason, their stories ended in horrific betrayal, suicide, tragedy, or madness.
They are invoking the sweeping language of epic romance, but the examples they choose are entirely disastrous.
It's so unsettling. It's like describing your new relationship by saying, we're just like Romeo and Juliet or Sid and Nancy.
And then they include themselves in the list. In such a night did Jessica steal from the wealthy Jew, and in such a night did young Lorenzo swear he loved her well, and ne'er a true one.
They are playfully acknowledging the theft, the betrayal of her father, and the potential falseness of their own vows right before the others arrive. It's incredibly dark for a comedy.
The atmospheric shift here is profound. Act V is saturated with beautiful music, starlight, and poetic voice. It is an attempt by the text to wash away the blood, the grit, and the trauma of the Venetian courtroom.
It is desperately trying to reestablish the harmony of a comedy.
Then Bassanio, Antonio, and Graziano return to Belmont, and Portia and Nerissa, who have beaten them home and changed out of their legal robes, immediately discover that the rings are missing from their husbands' fingers.
And they just tear into them, they threaten never to sleep with them, and they claim they will sleep with the lawyer and the clerk who have the rings. Portia explicitly says, "I'll have that doctor for my bedfellow."
They thoroughly torment the men, letting them squirm and make all these desperate, flailing excuses about how they had to give them up out of honor to the men who saved Antonio.
It is a comedic resolution to the intense dramatic tension, but it fundamentally establishes Portia as the absolute authority in the relationship.
She controls the narrative, she controlled the law in Venice, and now she exerts total control over the domestic sphere in Belmont.
After extracting sufficient apologies and watching the men sweat, the women reveal their disguises. They return the rings.
Furthermore, Portia, acting almost like a deity resolving all plot holes, produces a mysterious letter revealing that 3 of Antonio's ships have miraculously and safely returned to harbor. He is rich again.
And Nerissa hands Lorenzo and Jessica the special deed of gift for Shylock's wealth.
It's like the end of a heist movie.
The crew is back together, they're sitting on a sunny beach drinking margaritas, everyone's rich, everyone's safe.
But if you're really paying attention to the text, it feels deeply unearned.
Antonio is just third-wheeling in Belmont now, saved from the knife, but still utterly solitary and melancholy.
And Lorenzo and Jessica's new wealth, the very foundation of their happy romantic ending, is literally built on the complete destruction of Shylock. The man was psychologically broken and erased so they could be rich.
That is the brilliant, lingering dissonance that Shakespeare creates. The text tries to enforce a comedic, harmonious ending, but it cannot fully sustain it without leaving scars.
The sweet music of Belmont cannot completely drown out the memory of Shylock's devastation in Venice.
The psychological reality and the brutality of Act 4 bleed directly into the fairy tale of Act V. You cannot unsee the cruelty.
So, synthesizing everything we've talked about today in this deep dive, we've explored how a simple, everyday request for a loan spirals into a profound, violent clash of values.
The sources show us 2 distinct worlds. Venice is a place of hard laws, brutal commerce, and highly visible prejudice.
Belmont is a place of inherited wealth, hidden rules, and deceptive appearances. And the uncomfortable truth the text leaves you with is that neither world is truly innocent.
The text forces you to confront uncomfortable realities about human nature and society. It asks you to question your own strict adherence to rules. When does the rigid application of the law become an instrument of cruelty rather than an instrument of justice?
It challenges your capacity for mercy, not just when it is easy to give, but when it is incredibly difficult and demanded by someone you despise.
Most importantly, it holds up a mirror to how society treats the other, the marginalized, the outsider, especially when that outsider demands equal rights and protection under the very laws that society claims to revere.
Shylock demanded equality under the law, and the law was pedantically twisted to annihilate him.
It is incredibly heavy, and it is brilliantly constructed. We want to leave you with one final, unexplored thread to mull over on your own.
During the absolute climax of the trial, when Portia arrives in the courtroom, disguised as the brilliant legal scholar Balthazar, she looks at the room and asks her very first question to the Duke.
She says, "Which is the merchant here?" and which the Jew?
It is, without a doubt, a staggering line to read close.
Think about the implications of that for a second. If Shylock and Antonio are so fundamentally opposed, if they represent absolute good and absolute evil in their own minds and in the minds of their friends, why does the most brilliant character in the play need them pointed out to her?
Are the vengeful, marginalized outcast and the self-righteous, privileged insider actually indistinguishable from the outside?
It really makes you reconsider everything we've discussed today about who is right and who is wrong in those murky waters of justice.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into The Merchant of Venice.
Keep questioning the text, keep looking past the surface, and we'll catch you next time.